Okay, so we're demonstrating making drawing sheets for the Bygga toy set. First step you need is you need a drawing sheet, a tab. And so just remember how to do that. You go down to this plus button and say insert new tab, and then we look for create drawing. Inside create drawing, we're wanting our custom template, which at the very least, if you never made a copy of it for yourself, should be in our team folder. You guys have an Orlando Bell, whichever bell you're in, or Orlando Bell 3, right, if you're in my third bell, and that's a place that you can grab the template to make your drawing sheet. So you get our nice custom title block. Now you're gonna have a lot of pages for this project. We're only gonna have one drawing tab. In the end, that's our hope. Now, Onshape does not allow two people to work on the same drawing tab at the same time. So you might make more than one tab while you're creating these for the sake of collaborating and having one teammate make some sheets and another teammate make others. But in the end, we'll have you copy and paste the drawing sheets all into a single tab, okay? So remember, within a single drawing tab, you have a sheet manager over on the left where you can add pages, okay? So we do have the ability to copy paste from drawing sheets from one tab to another. So yes, dividing and conquering, get a couple tabs going so a couple of you can work on this at the same time. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the long flat wood piece as my first example. All right, so the flat, it had like 6 holes in it, right? So I'm gonna go insert, insert, and I'm looking in the current document. I have all my pieces in this document. If for some reason I had a piece made in another document, right? If you guys accidentally modeled in 2 separate documents, then as long as I have access, like that document's been shared with me, I can go to other docs and then kind of search for it. Is it in shared with me? Is it created by me? But I can go looking for where that document is. So if it's in the current doc, I just keep it on current doc. It's in the part studio, and I'm looking for the wooden flat, the long one, the 1x6, okay? So I'm selecting it in this insert menu, and I'm gonna try to see what the 1x1 scale looks like. And oh, it's really big, right? Now, it's obviously too tall, but I would like to rotate it 90 degrees, and I'm gonna hold off on deciding if this 1-to-1 scale is too big until I rotate it 90. So how do I rotate it 90? Well, I first place it by clicking, then I stop making any new views. Onshape has the project view tool on, and it's kind of like wanting me to make more views. I don't want to make any more views. So I'm going to turn that tool off by clicking on it or hitting escape. Okay, I have to rotate this before I ever use it to make more views. Otherwise, it gets locked in its position. So how do I rotate it? You double click on it, and then inside this view properties window is rotation angle, and it's not grayed out, so it's going to let me rotate. I'm going to do 90, accept. Now it's still very long, right, taking up a lot of space, but I also know that when I go to project this, let's say to the right, it's a very thin piece, and that right view doesn't need hardly any space at all. And I'm only going to get one dimension in that right view anyway, which is just to show kind of the depth of the extrusion of this profile. So that's okay. I would like to add an isometric view. So project is still turned on. I'm going to choose it, and I'm going to go diagonally up and right. And let's see if we can't get it to fit. I think I can make it all squeeze in. Okay? Right-clicking to say show shaded. And I'd probably like, well, the scale label is there, so that's fine. I've got the scale. All right, so I have views. I don't just want views. I want to communicate the size of this thing, the actual dimensions. I put myself mentally in the place of thinking about modeling this part. And I think, what would I need to know to model it? Those are the dimensions that I'm going to need to put on the drawing sheet. So if I were trying to model this, I would make a rectangle. And what do I need? I need to know how wide my rectangle is, right? So I'm going to dimension the width. I need to know how tall my rectangle is. So I need to dimension the height. I'm then going to extrude that rectangle and I need to know how far the extrusion is, and so that's where I'm using this small right view over here. I know it's kind of squeezed in, but that right there is the depth. So there's my 3 principal directions to get width, height, depth, and that gets me the wood block. But now I need to know where those holes are. I need to know how big they are and where they are. So I got to size them and locate them. Okay? Sizing it first, I can use the regular dimension tool for a hole. Let me see, where is the, okay. It depends on the zoom level of your window, guys, right? Your Chrome, your screen. But if I zoom out more, I get more tools in the toolbar. If I zoom in, remember those tools start to kind of get collapsed into drop-down menus. There is a button. Right now I've got it where it's visible on the screen. But if I zoom in more, it may go into a drop-down. It is only, you're only able to use it if you modeled in the Part Studio a hole using the hole tool. If you did not use the hole tool, you'll have to use the regular dimension tool. Okay, if you like removed a circle or extruded the negative space around circles, then you didn't use the hole tool and you'll use the regular dimension tool. However, if you use the hole tool, you can use this tool, which looks like a diameter symbol and a depth symbol side by side, and it's called the hole and thread callout. And so to size the hole, since I use the hole tool, I'm going to click on one of them. All right, that sizes it. And I don't need to go down the line and do all 6 of them if they're the same. But to acknowledge that they're all the same, I turned off the dimensioning tool. Okay, nothing's selected anymore. I'm going to double click on this dimension. And I'm going to add, I can either add it, I'll do it, I think I have enough space. I'm going to use this field is going to be behind that message. I can go in front of, behind, I can also go above and below. But behind it, I'm going to do a couple spaces and then a capital X, like the multiplication sign, and 6. So it says, recreate this geometry 6 times. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so now I know how big the holes are. Cool, so I know how big the wood block is. I know how big the hole is. I just need to know where to put those holes. Okay, well, the first one, I can dimension it from the left side to the center. We always locate round things based on their center mark. So how far from the edge to the center, that would locate that first one. It does look vertically in the middle, but if I want to confirm that, I can go from the bottom or top to that center point to kind of confirm that it's, what dimension that is. Now I got the first one located. You and I know that the rest of these are all evenly spaced, right? So instead of laying out every dimension, I'm actually just going to do one more. That's the printer finishing. So that's a notification on my tablet that the printer finished. I'm going to take this 1.25 and I'm going to add a note that it's the typical spacing between all these holes. So again, turning the dimensioning tool off, it's off, hitting escape, whatever, a couple times. I'm going to double click on this dimension. I'm going to use the below side and I'm going to add TYP. TYP stands for typical. So that is the typical space in between all the holes. So now, right, I'm not going to have a dimension, which you might think somebody modeling off of my drawing would be stuck going, well, I don't know what the dimension is. Well, they'd look and they should be processing what's on the sheet. And when they see this is supposed to tell them, right, this 1.25 is not just for this distance or just these two holes, it's for, right, others. It's a typical space. So then they would know, oh, okay, that's why they didn't give me this dimension from the second one to the third one to fourth one, is I'm supposed to use this 1.25 as the typical spacing distance. Okay? So now I know where the first one is. I know how to space the rest of them. I know how big they are. I actually have everything dimensioned. That sheet is done. When you're ready to do a second sheet, right, I would rename your sheets before you move on. This is the wood flat long. It was kind of, I also said 1x6 on some of my things. So I would make sure your drawing sheets have names so you remember what sheet has what stuff on it. If you would like to name the title of your drawing, this title is for all pages. So I don't want the title here to be this wood long flat. I want it to be generic to something that's applicable to all sheets. And you get that drawing title by changing the tab name. So I'm going to rename the tab, and this will just be my IKEA Bygga project. And that will eventually update. I know it doesn't always do it instantly. Okay, so what does it look like to do a second page, right? You're going to open the sheet manager if you didn't open it already, and you're going to hit this add new sheet. It'll give you more sheets every time you click it, and then you can go to a new sheet. And then we can do another one. So this time, how about I do the red slotted piece here? That red plastic piece. I'm going to try a 1-to-1 scale again. I think it should fit. I don't have to rotate this one. I like that it's horizontal. So that'll be my front. I'll go top or right either way to get the thickness of the part, because I can't see that unless I project at least one more view. I don't really see a need to project more than that other than the isometric. So I think 2 orthographic views is plenty. I'll get an isometric. I'm going to shade it. Right click, show shaded. Okay. Again, I wanted to mention this by thinking about what do I need to know to model it. So let's think about the outer edge of the plastic piece first. I need to know how big that is. And then I'll worry about the little features inside, right? Okay, so dimension tool turned on. I need to know how long it is. All right. Well, I could do that in the top view here, just the overall length. Now, the reality is I'm doing that because we've said before in class that we should be able to glance at a drawing sheet and know the physically longest distance of a part without having to do math. Okay. I am going to add a little bit to this though, because the outer shape is what's called a slot, and the typical way to dimension a slot is actually center to center of the arcs on the end. And so I'm going to give that distance too. That's a little redundant to that length, but this one, right, this one's kind of very useful to people, but it's, you'd have to do some math. You'd have to take this and you'd have to add the radius on the end twice. But I'm going to give that. So I need to know the radius on the end. That'll be repeated for the second one over there. They'll be assumed to be the same, or I can put times 2. I could do x2. Okay. And then I need to know, that takes care of the shape of my slot. Length and height, kind of width and height, right? This radius allows me to know how tall it is. But now I need to extrude this profile and get thickness. So I need this dimension right here, which if the numbers are squeezed between extension lines, you can pull those numbers above or below to have more space. And you can even change by clicking the elbow, you can change which way that little flag goes with your dimension for spacing on your sheet. Okay. So that takes care of the outer piece. But what about the features inside that I want to have cut away? The holes, the slots, etc. So I need to size them and locate them. Right? I did not use the hole tool. So if I turn on the hole thread callout and I try to click on the circle, it won't let me. Because when I modeled this, I actually made what you're seeing here on this drawing. I made that as my sketch and extruded the negative space, leaving the holes and slots behind. So since I didn't use the hole tool to create the holes, I have to use the regular dimension tool. Okay? I'm not going to put the dimension on the circle, all of them, because they're all the same diameter, so I'll do 1. Leader lines to dimension round things should not be vertical or horizontal. They should be at an angle. So I'm doing that at the angle. It catches your eye better. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to add a note that is, I'll go below. I'm going to do TYP, says typical. That is the typical diameter. So anytime there's a round feature that doesn't have a diameter, they're going to be like, what's the diameter, right? This is sitting here on the drawing sheet to say, hey, this is the typical diameter to be used unless otherwise noted. So I'm actually going to let that live there for both the slots and the holes. okay? Because I won't dimension then a radius or diameter of slots, and people will be like, what are they? Well, visually they should look the same, and this note here says this is a typical diameter used. So that sizes at least the holes every direction, but the slots are longer. So I would need to dimension the length of the slot. Now I know the distance across the slot, but how long are the slots? Again, slots are generally dimensioned from like the center point to the center point. Now, those are not currently showing up, those little plus signs. That is done with a tool that looks like a circle with a plus in the middle called a center mark. If your zoom level is such that it's in a drop-down menu, you might have to start looking under like little drop-downs. Okay, so like right here, where it looked like I had a construction line almost, like a segment, in that drop-down I find center mark. So I would turn on center mark and click on an arc, and it'll apply the plus where that center mark is. I'm going to go add it to all of them. This little dialog box is populating my selections, and I need to accept them. Okay, so I did that because I want to show how long the slot is, right? I've got, this one really requires a couple dimensions, not just the diameter, but also the length. And so I'm going to go center mark to center mark to get me the length of that. So now I don't like how that dimension's got the lines going through it. So I need to kind of grab it, try to move it a little bit to see if I can't get the number and the arrows to not overlap each other. I did. If I can't within there, I'll just pull the numbers to the outside like that. But don't leave the numbers and the arrows on top of each other. That's hard to read. Okay? So I'd say I've got my slots and my circles sized. Now I just need to locate them. Well, this one on the left, this circle on the left, is kind of located by the plus, the center mark. Being only one center mark, it's like we know it's concentric to the outer arc. Okay, because this circle should have a plus mark and this arc should have a plus. And the fact that I don't see two close together helps me see that it's concentric. So that one's actually already located. I know exactly where it is. Okay. If I want to know where the second hole is, right, instead of having people assume it's in the middle, I can then locate it by giving a dimension from center to center. Okay. Now that locates that next one. If I want to locate the slot, I can do that again, referenced from this center mark. I'm kind of using that as like my datum point, my reference point to use. From there, I can go to one of these 2 points. I'll just go to the closer one of that slot, and that would help locate it. I think it's fairly obvious that this is centered vertically because of that hole being concentric on the ends, both of them, and everything lining up nicely. If I don't even put a vertical dimension, it kind of leaves the reader, and if they wonder, they're going to go, you know what, it's probably supposed to be in the middle, right? It's so obvious. So I'm going to leave that off. Less dimensions can make our drawing cleaner. I thought there was one more thing I was going to put, though, or am I good? Right? So that helps me size the slot with that. This locates the slot. That located the middle circle. Yeah. Oh, I think I was just going to say, I'm not even going to put dimensions on the right side because people, if they start to wonder, well, where are these located? The absence of having any dimensions should lead them to thinking it's symmetrical, right? I'm just going to use the same dimensions on the left side, on the right side. So literally that's it. I'll call that one good. Major help. I'll do one more. And I'm picking some of the harder ones to do maybe. So let's insert. I'm going to do the yellow triangle. I'm going to go 1-to-1 scale. Hopefully you guys are following along pretty well. It doesn't really matter if I project up or right. It's a thin little view that I just need that thickness value. So I do need to show either a top or right to be able to dimension that thickness of this piece. And I'd also like to project an isometric. And I'll shade it. So there's the thickness. All right. For the outer shape of the triangle, the plastic piece, dimension it here may be a little different than what you did to inspect it with the calipers, but it's already made. So I just, right? And I could, if somebody could have given this to me, instead of giving me the caliper and saying measure it for yourself, that would be easier to model it if I just had this. This is like a triangle, sorry, that had rounded corners, so I can't really go corner to corner, but I'll dimension the segments. And they're all the same, right? So I could add a ×3 or add a typical note to it. TYP just says, hey, that's the typical distance here, without having to dimension all 3 of them. And then the corners are obviously rounded, and so I will put a radius on one of the corners. Again, I don't want that to be vertical or horizontal, so just let it live at an angle. I really don't want it to overlap the other extension line like that. So, and I will say typical again, or ×3, either way. So here it's very clearly only 3 corners, so I could do that as well. Okay. So that alone makes this an equilateral triangle if all the lengths and radiuses are the same. So that takes care of the outer shape. Now I got to figure out where the circles are, how they're laid out. And so I actually decided that it was kind of helpful, where is it? Where the center mark tool was. There's a 2-point center line that kind of lets me use it as a construction line. So I decided I'd like to add like a construction line between 2 pairs that come together at an angle here. So that was just, it was called the 2-point center line, but I'm using that as a construction line to draw. And I'd like to go ahead and put this angle at 60 degrees and say that's the typical radius, or sorry, typical angle. That's between any of them. That helps make sure it's clear that these are all laid out in very much an equiangular arrangement. So I'm not going to go label any more angles, but that's between any of lines connecting circles, there should be 60 degrees. Which might seem obvious to you, but that kind of visually confirms it to people. All right, so that helps me know kind of how to space them, but I need to know how far apart they are, right? And how big the holes are. So I need the distance from center to center. Again, I want that repeated everywhere. So let's add a TYP to say that's the typical spacing. And then let's add a dimension that sizes the holes. They're all the same. So again, a leader line should be at like an angle, approximately 45 degrees. And I can add the TYP again, or you can count them up and say X6. So now I know how big the holes are. I know how far apart they're spaced. Kind of know the arrangement that it's on these 60-degree angles. You may think, well, but what about locating the first one? How do you know where the first one is to begin spacing them? And it's actually concentric to this arc. So again, that's somewhat obvious because there's not, like if I turn on the center mark tool and try to hit this plus sign for this arc or this hole, you don't get 2 different plus signs. So the fact that there aren't 2 plus signs close together lets people know when they start modeling this to start with a circle that's concentric. So I would say this one's already located and we're seeing how to build out the rest of them from there. So that one's done. So if I gave this drawing sheet with those dimensions, which I didn't have that many, right? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have because it's very symmetrical, equilateral, equiangular, right? It doesn't take that many to let people know how to create this shape. There you go. Anyway, hope that helps. You guys have to make all these other drawing sheets, right? Including the ones I just demoed. So you have to recreate them, but that should help. You have to get all of them. Do not forget, though, to be innovating if you haven't done that, so that you can start to do some of the prepare, right? You got to have somebody on your team starting to model the new piece, getting it printed, etc. So don't just blindly start to do drawing sheets for a day or 2, day and a half, and then kind of wake up on Wednesday going, yeah, we still don't know what our new part is. Then you're really, really behind.